Destruction doesn't always come with fire. It doesn't need blood. It doesn't need shouting, drama, public scenes, or elaborate revenge plans. Sometimes the most devastating kind of destruction is the one nobody even notices because it wasn't loud. It was deliberate, strategic, quiet, and that's exactly what Machiavelli understood. Better than almost anyone else in history. If you want to destroy someone completely, don't attack them head-on. That's emotional. That's predictable. That puts you on their level. Instead, you let them fall apart by themselves. You don't push. You give them the stage. Let them speak. Let them expose. Let them dig the hole. And walk right into it. And you watch, you wait. Because the moment you react angrily, loudly, emotionally, you lose control. You've entered their frame, and reaction is always weakness in disguise. But when you stay calm, stay still, and stay silent while they try to provoke, perform, or pull you into the mess, you starve them, not of attention, but of oxygen, and without oxygen, even the biggest fire dies out. Now, here's how this actually works in real life. Let's say someone insults you, calls you out, tries to embarrass you in front of a group. Most people would instinctively fire back defensive words. Anger, maybe even sarcasm, but not a Machiavellian mind. That mindset would smile inside, knowing, this is exactly where I gain control. You don't respond. You don't even blink. You simply pause and look at them, not with aggression, not with shock, just a still, quiet gaze, and then you look away. You change the subject. You talk to someone else. You move the energy of the room without saying a single thing. That's when the power dynamic flips. They expected a fight. You gave them nothing of wood. A silence so calm that suddenly they seem like the unstable one, the desperate one, the weak one. Because the truth is, most people don't want to beat you, they want to control how others see you. They want to twist the narrative, make you look bad, rattle your confidence, humiliate you without ever laying a hand on you. So, when you respond, you feed the fire. But when you don't, even better. When you ignore it entirely, you take the air out of their lungs. And the more they talk, the more foolish they sound, the more they rant. The more people start to wonder, why are they so fixated on someone who clearly doesn't care? You've changed the frame. That's your first weapon, stillness. Now let's be clear, stillness is not weakness. It's not passivity. It's not submission. It's dominance. Stillness confuses people. They're ready for shouting. They're ready for resistance. But you give them quiet. You give them composure. And now, they look unbalanced. They look excessive. They look emotional. And the more they try to convince people of their power, their position, their righteousness, the more it slips away. Because anyone who needs to prove they have power doesn't have it. And that's where Machiavelli was brilliant. He never needed to out-argue his enemies. He let them unravel in front of an audience. He didn't destroy their arguments. He let them destroy their own credibility. And when it was all over, when the chaos settled, he wasn't just still standing. He was elevated. Now, let's talk about how to apply this with surgical precision in your own life. Next time someone disses, pecks you in front of others, take a breath. Don't react. Don't shift your posture. Don't look shocked. Instead, let the silence stretch a little longer than normal. Let the room feel it. Then carry on as if nothing happened. Keep your tone calm. Keep your face unreadable. And move the conversation forward. What you just did is far more powerful than any clever. Come back. You showed the entire room that their words aren't worthy of your energy. That's the ultimate flex. And here's the kicker. Most people want to be able to explain what just happened, but they'll feel it. They'll sense the power shift. You didn't defend yourself. You didn't ask for backup. You didn't even flinch. You just owned the silence. And in that silence, your opponent began to shrink. Why? Because deep down, people don't want to see a fight, they want to see who stays in control. And control always belongs to the person who says the least, but commands the most. That's how you start flipping the script. Instead of reacting, you start subtracting. You remove your energy, your presence, your validation. You stop giving them access to your time, your space, your attention. You don't make a scene. You don't post a vague quote. You don't tell anyone what you're doing. You just disappear. And that's when the unraveling begins. Because now they're spinning with no one left to spin with. They escalate. They push harder. They get louder. And the louder they get, the worse they look. Because you're not even playing anymore. Machiavelli understood that power doesn't come from striking, it comes from watching your enemy overextend themselves while you do nothing at all. Let them keep talking. Let them keep explaining, accusing, performing. You don't even need to deny anything. The public will draw their own conclusions. Because here is the rule in the court of public perception: the one who looks most in control wins, and the one who looks like they're scrambling, justifying, pleading for attention. They've already lost. This is not about a single conflict. It's not about one fight. This is a war of perception, of psychology, of quiet power. And when done right, you don't just win. You become untouchable. Let's go deeper, because destruction, real destruction, isn't about direct confrontation, it's about contrast. You don't scream louder. You speak slower. You don't explain more. You explain less. You don't fight harder. You move on, completely unfazed. And while you do that, your enemy becomes obsessed. They start talking more, doing more, trying to gain back control and failing publicly. People start to notice the imbalance. They start seeing the desperation, the instability, the emotional cracks, and you remain the contrast, calm, clean, collected. He understood that power doesn't always need to be loud, it just needs to be undeniable. This is what Machiavelli mastered. He didn't outshout his rivals. He let their own behavior reveal the truth. You don't beat someone by tearing them down. You beat them by making their actions look irrelevant next to your composure. Now, let's talk about your second weapon. Silence in the face of attention-seeking. The people who attack you publicly or privately are usually not strong. They're hungry. And when they aim at it, you through disrespect, gossip, accusations, they're not really targeting you. They're trying to siphon your energy, your spotlight, your audience. They're starving for something: recognition, attention, validation. But here's how you dismantle the tactic. You let them chase your shadow. You don't engage. You don't match energy. You don't play the same game. When you refuse to react, their voice begins to echo in an empty room. People start asking, why do they keep bringing you up? Once people start questioning the integrity of the attacker, everything they say begins to lose weight. Why are they so triggered by someone who's not even responding? You move in a different direction entirely, with contrast. You keep building. You stay focused. You remain silent and productive. You keep winning not to spite them but to outgrow them. And with each move forward you make, they shrink. They don't look like a rival anymore. They look like someone stuck in the past, fixated on you, obsessed with a war you're no longer in. And nothing is more embarrassing than that. This is the brilliance of silence. That's when doubt starts to creep in. And in Machiavellian terms, doubt is decay. And that's when you strike. But not with a counterattack. You show up. Not to clap back, but to stand out. They frame your actions as arrogant, your success as undeserved. Your integrity is fake. You speak calmly. You deliver real value. You dress sharp. You act unfazed. They start defending themselves to everyone, trying to clarify the truth. You're not trying to look like the winner. You are the winner and everyone in the room feels it. Your attacker. They're still scrambling, still ranting, still performing, but the crowd isn't watching them anymore. They're watching you, because you've become what they could never be, unbothered. Now, let's peel back another layer. You start showing up with excellence in front of the very people they whispered to. You lead meetings. You deliver results. You act with clarity, grace, and confidence. Some enemies aren't loud. They're not trying to humiliate you in public. They operate behind the curtain, quietly, subtly. They smile to your face, then sow seeds of doubt behind your back. They don't want war. They want erosion. There's no scandal, just quiet, consistent performance, and the slow death of their credibility. But you are simply letting them tie the rope. This is where most people get tripped up. They panic. But every time you explain yourself, you validate the rumor. You breathe life into the lie. And that's exactly what they want. Machiavelli would never explain. He would expose without ever lifting a finger. So what do? You become more visible, not less. You raise your profile. Not once do you mention the accuser, because you don't need to. That no one could ever tear them down. You let your presence contradict the story, and when people compare the version they've been told to the version they're witnessing, the liar collapses. You didn't destroy them, they self-destructed, trying to rewrite your identity. That's the brilliance of quiet dominance. Your enemy thought your silence meant guilt, and now they're the one hanging from it. There's no retaliation, and here's the real twist. You don't even need them to lose. You just need them to lose you. You exit the conversation. You remove your presence. You stop participating in their orbit. And suddenly, their obsession has no oxygen. They spiral. They lash out. They become more dramatic. And you ascend. Because power, true power, doesn't need to respond. It just needs to remain standing while everything else collapses. Machiavelli didn't teach men to fight. He taught them to become so excellent, so necessary, so untouchable. Because any attempt to destroy someone like that ends in one conclusion: self-destructs. Now, here's your third weapon: exposure through contradiction. You don't attack someone's character. You don't call out their lies. You simply live in a way that contradicts everything they say. They call you arrogant. Be gracious, generous, calm. They say you're incompetent. Deliver flawless results, silently, consistently. They say you're manipulative. Show transparency, integrity, precision, and the more they speak and the more your actions disprove their words, the more isolated they become. Not because you silence them, but because you never acknowledge them at all. That's when the collapse becomes complete. Not in front of a crowd, not in a public defeat, but in irrelevance, because in this game, the worst thing that can happen to your enemy isn't humiliation. It's being ignored, and the best way to destroy someone is to make their existence insignificant. Let's go further. Some enemies are louder than others, but the most dangerous ones. They don't scream. They mimic. They don't insult you. They copy you. They imitate your moves, your voice, your ideas, and try to pass it off as their own. They don't confront you as an opponent. They quietly try to replace you. And this is where most people panic. They feel like their identity is being stolen, their voice diluted, their uniqueness fading into the noise. But Machiavelli would have smiled at this. He understood that when someone imitates you, it means they've already admitted something. Your path is stronger than anything they could build on their own, and that means you've already won. So what do? You don't attack the copycat, you accelerate. You raise your standards, you move faster, you pivot quicker, you sharpen your skills, evolve your message, elevate your brand. By the time they replicate one version of you, you've already become someone else, and now they're chasing a ghost, a shadow, a silhouette of someone you no longer are. That's how you become unreachable. Because if they're trying to become you, you've already made them relevant. There is no competition between the blueprint and the imitation, and here's the rule. If you acknowledge them, you validate them, so you never speak their name. Not out of fear, not out of kindness, but out of strategy. Silence in this case isn't passive, it's positioning. You show the world that there was never a race to begin with. Because while they play catch-up, you're playing a game they'll never understand. This is how you destroy the enemy who wants to become you, by refusing to stay still long enough for them to catch you. Now, let's talk about another kind of enemy, the most fragile kind. The one who believes they're better than you. They think they're untouchable, smarter, more powerful, above you. These are the easiest to destroy, not with attacks, but with position. You don't argue. You don't challenge them. You don't try to prove anything. You listen. You watch. You observe how they behave when they believe you're beneath them, and then you build. You build with precision, quietly, patiently, intentionally, and one day, without warning, people stop turning their heads when the proud one speaks. They start turning to you. Your voice carries more weight. Your presence draws more eyes. Your ideas move more people. And suddenly, the person who looked down on you, they're left behind. Because the applause they once relied on is fading. And ego doesn't know how to survive without attention. When that happens, they collapse, not because you crushed them, but because you outgrew them in front of everyone. And the beautiful thing, you never once had to raise your voice. You never took what they had. You simply built something they could never match. That's how you win quietly, strategically, completely. Because sometimes the most devastating thing you can do to someone who underestimated you is to succeed so completely that they can't even pretend you're not better anymore. But this goes deeper, because the most complete kind of destruction isn't reputational. It's not social. It's not even professional. It's existential. You don't just outmaneuver them, you make their entire strategy irrelevant. You turn their attacks into background noise. You move with such clarity, such confidence, that even when they manage to land a hit, no one notices, because everyone's attention is already somewhere else on you. And that's the true Machiavellian shift. You stop trying to win individual battles. You start owning frames. What's a frame? It's the unspoken narrative people believe about you regardless of what anyone says. And you don't control it with words. You control it with tone, with body language, with patterns of behavior. with how you respond or don't respond. Let's say someone mocks you publicly. If you defend yourself, they control the frame. If you explain yourself, they control the frame. If you retaliate emotionally, you've entered their world. But if you remain calm, if your body language stays relaxed while theirs gets agitated, if you stay anchored while they get performative, you've just rewritten the frame. Now, you're not someone under attack, you're someone so grounded, so untouchable, that even being mentioned by your enemy makes them look unstable. And here's the kicker. The audience will feel it. They won't always know why, but they'll feel the shift. And that's when their voice begins to die, not because you silenced it, but because they lost credibility trying to harm you. Now, let's go one level deeper. True destruction, the final Machiavellian form of it, is not about taking someone's power. It's about ensuring they never recover it. How? You hit them in a place they don't even know they re-exposed their identity. Here's how you do it. You stop talking about them. You stop mentioning them. You erase them, not with hatred, but with indifference. When someone brings them up, you say things like, "Oh, I haven't thought about them in a long time. Hope they're doing okay. Not sure what they're up to these days." You say it gently, with no emotion, and in doing so, you make one thing devastatingly clear. They didn't even make the final cut in your story. They weren't your villain. They weren't your rival. They were just a lesson. And that's what hits hardest, because it doesn't just remove power, it removes meaning, and there's no coming back from that. Because when people hear you speak with that level of peace, when they feel your disinterest, they don't just respect you. They pity your enemy, and that is the final collapse. They didn't just lose the war, they lost the right to matter. And you never had to fight. You never had to scream. You never had to lift a finger. Because the people who watched the conflict unfold, they're now watching you rise, and they're watching the enemy disappear, quietly, without a headline, without a scandal, just gone. That's Machiavellian destruction, not with blood, not with revenge, but with dominance through silence. Because the most powerful people aren't the ones who win every fight. They're the ones you offend once and never get a second chance with. They don't slam doors. They just stop opening them. And that's your final move. You don't send a message. You become the message. You show up in better rooms, with better people, at high levels. You move in a frequency your enemy will never reach. You stop being a play on the same field. You become a different game entirely. And that is what breaks them. You made it about being felt. They thought it was about being seen. They thought the game was status. You made it legacy. They thought it was attention. You made it impact. And now they're left with nothing. They're now orbiting your ideas. They're now following you. Because the audience they once tried to impress, the people they tried to turn against you, and their story, it's been replaced by your silence. A silence that echoes louder than anything they could ever say. That is Machiavellian power. Not with force, but with presence. Not with anger, but with legacy. Not by reacting, but by becoming untouchable.